Hey everyone, it's Alexi Uzas here from Exile Entertainment. In this video, I'm going to give you the best resources for independent filmmaking. Now, just a reminder before I kick off this video that spots are available for our Producing Accelerator program that helps filmmakers like you consistently finance and produce your own films. So if you're working on a project right now and you're wondering how you're going to get through that financing stage, what I want you to do is stick around until the end of this video, and I'm going to give you some more information about our accelerator, how that works, and how you can join. And for the best filmmaking advice, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to be notified when we post a video. So the number one resource that you want to have as an independent filmmaker is a team. I can't stress enough the importance of working with at least one, but preferably two people who are as committed, as driven, and as passionate as you are to either make a specific film or to go on that journey to become filmmakers and to build a long-term career as filmmakers, whether it's film producers, directors, DPs. It can be anyone that is in the filmmaking industry, but you want to really latch on to at least two people. And look, if you can have people who are involved in the creative process, then that's even better. And what I mean by the creative process, so I'll dig into that in more detail because the whole thing is a creative process. I mean the writing process. So that those early stages, when you're coming up with a seed of an idea and you're trying to get that seed and grow it into something that resembles, a little plant or a little tree, right? So you've grown that seed into something bigger, a screenplay, an outline, and then you just want to take that idea, take that screenplay, take that treatment or outline, and really be able to grow that into a full-blown tree, so a full-blown project. Without at least one or two people to help you do that, it becomes extremely difficult for you to keep up the motivation, to keep up the grit and determination that is required to be an independent filmmaker. And I can tell you from experience that being an independent filmmaker for myself as a producer, it's something that is extremely difficult to do. There are often times when you question what you're doing, you question your chosen path, you question whether it is all going to work out, you question the projects that you're working on, the people that you're working with. There can be a lot of doubt. There can be a lot of moments when you're just not sure whether you're going to make it through. And so having at least one other person or two other people there that you can kind of go on that journey with is extremely, extremely valuable. Also, it helps to have a couple of people that you can bounce ideas off, whether it's ideas about an actual project, whether it's about swapping resources, so things that I'm going to talk about in this video. If you can have a couple of other people that you're constantly just bouncing ideas off, that you're speaking with, that you're connecting with on a consistent basis, and you're kind of getting through this journey together, it's going to make the whole thing easier. So really my number one advice, the number one resource that I think that you should have as an independent filmmaker is a team. The second resource for you to have and use as an independent filmmaker is films. And now that might sound extremely obvious, but if you're in the film industry, and especially if you're working in the industry full time, no doubt there have been periods where you've simply stopped watching as many films as you used to watch. Or maybe you've gone through a period where you're just not watching that many films. And really, films are the best way to continue to get inspiration for your work. And so if you are ever having a moment where there's a bit of a lull, or you have any doubt, or you need some inspiration or some motivation, then my best advice is simply to turn to films. turn to the reasons that you got into the industry to begin with. And really the best thing that you can do as a filmmaker is just keep falling in love with films, because the more that you do that, the more you're kind of fueling that passion, that burning desire to make films and to be in the film industry. And of course, from a craft point of view, then the utility of films is, it's invaluable. So being able to watch films and study films is really such a good way to develop your own skills as a filmmaker. And really now, especially with everything being online, there's no excuse for not being able to find films and watch films. And I encourage everyone watching this video to try and set aside some time, whether it's every week or every month, to watch films. Now, if you're much more focused on TV, then of course TV might be the area that you kind of delve into more. If you're a filmmaker and you want to make films, but you find yourself watching lots of TV, it's fine, but you may want to start swapping out some of that TV watching to start watching films again, right? Try and schedule in some films rather than TV. It's going to be the best way to start, like I said, kind of continuing to have that inspiration, and of course keep fueling that passion. Now, if you're working on a specific project, films are an absolute goldmine when it comes to preparing for that project, because if you're writing a film in a particular genre, if you're dealing with particular themes, or if there's a particular shooting style that you want to use, then no doubt someone has done it before you, and no doubt there's likely going to be a really experienced and highly skilled filmmaker that has done that previously. And so films are, again, just a great way to start learning or start preparing for the film that you're going to make. Okay, so let's talk about some software that are really vital resources that can help you in your journey as an independent filmmaker. So the first and obvious one is Final Draft. That's kind of the go-to for screenwriting. When it comes to budgeting and scheduling, I highly recommend Movie Magic. They've actually just released an update to their previously kind of archaic software. So that's the budgeting software that I use for budgeting. A lot of ADs use that for scheduling, so I highly recommend that. If you don't want to invest the money in Movie Magic, then simple spreadsheets, Google Docs are definitely the way to go. But I encourage you, if you're able to spend a bit of money, to invest in the software like Movie Magic. The other software that I highly recommend is a project management software. So we are using Asana at our production company. I've previously used Trello on projects, but after trying a few different things, Asana is the one that has kind of stuck for me. I also find it really useful when you're working on multiple films at a time, because of the way that you can lay out your dashboard in Asana, or the way that you can kind of split it up is to create projects and to create teams. And so it's really good when you're working on different films, and within those films might also have different teams attached to them. So Asana is my go-to for project management. Slack is something that I find useful for internal communication, but I'm yet to use that through an entire production. So really for a production, I actually find WhatsApp as being really kind of useful for when you're on production. You can just start groups, whether it's departments or just entire production teams. WhatsApp can be really useful for that. Another one that I highly recommend is accounting software. So whether you're making a film in Australia or the US or another territory, the software that you're actually using may differ. In Australia, we use software called Xero. And the difference from me making films without accounting software to now making films with accounting software, I mean, it just makes the process so much easier, because rather than, just making a film and kind of keeping receipts and trying to keep tabs of everything and then trying to make sense of it after, which usually involves you having to sit down for days or weeks on end, just kind of sifting through everything. If you set everything up properly from the start with accounting software, then there's no there's no period at the end where you're just having to dedicate days and days to getting everything sorted. Everything's set up properly from the start, and everything can just streamline through. One thing that we also use with accounting is a receipt processor. We use HubDoc. There's another one called Receipt Bank. Those are really useful also for when you're on set, because what you can do is if you send a runner to grab something and they get a receipt, when it comes back, someone in the production office can just take a photo using one of these apps, and it actually sends directly through. It then recognizes the receipt and shoots it through to your accounting software. On the accounting side, you may also want to speak with an accountant, and I'm going to touch on who some of the key personnel I think you need as an independent filmmaker actually in this video. But for now, those are the main kind of softwares that you're going to want to use. So really, between those few things, and of course an email software like Gmail, I have obviously Google Drive attached to that. I prefer using Google Drive to Dropbox just because I use Gmail, so that's kind of linked to Google Drive and it all sits in one place. That is software that I would highly recommend using as well. And then just using Google Drive to house all your production documents. On the post-production side, while I don't have as much experience on that side, what I'm seeing come up more and more is software or a program called Frame.io. That's something that our post-production team tends to use on every project. For screeners, so for like festivals and distribution, definitely Vimeo is still the go-to. There's a software called Indee, INDEE.tv, that you can use to send out personalized screeners. So if you're kind of in that early stage of sending out screeners and you don't just want to use a password protected Vimeo link, then you can use Indee. You can actually watermark each specific video and link that gets sent out. So that can be useful really when you're in the editing process and maybe you're sending it out to get feedback and you don't want other people to see it. But when it comes to like the industry stage, so let's say you're sending it out to distributors or you're sending it out to sales agents, using a password protected Vimeo link is fine to do in that case. It's pretty simple, the kind of software and the tools that we use. We try and keep it simple. We kind of try and choose one in each of the main categories and stick to using that. But that's the kind of toolkit that we use to make films independently. Another great category of resources is the trades. So I'm talking about publications like Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Screen, IndieWire, those types of publications. I find those kind of really useful for just keeping up to date with trends in the marketplace, perhaps coming across interesting interviews or podcasts, as well as any kind of announcements that are going on. So maybe festival related announcements, deadlines, those types of things. I think it's just a really good way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the industry. So usually I'll try and check in on a trade at least once a day, even if it's just spending kind of 15 or 20 minutes, having a read through. My go-to at the moment is Variety, but it does kind of change just depending on, I guess, maybe how I'm feeling, or maybe I'll get sick of a publication after a while and want to jump onto something else. I find that keeping up to date with those trades can be really, really beneficial. Also, if there's any specific trades to your country, that can be really useful, or any any other publications, or even newsletters related to guilds that you might be a part of. So if you're a member of the PGA in America or SPA in Australia, the Producers Association, subscribing to their newsletter. Or again, in Australia, subscribing to the Screen Australia newsletter, that can be a really good resource. Or the state agencies. I think being up to kind of across what's going on in your industry, of course, specific to your country, and then specific even to your guild or your area of expertise in your industry is really important. So if you're not doing that at the moment, that's a really easy one. You can start implementing that straight away and just putting aside 10, 15, 20 minutes a day just to go through those and kind of keeping up to date with what's going on in the industry. Another really important resource for independent filmmaking is allies. So having allies, and what I mean by allies in this context is people like accountants or lawyers who are not only there to provide a service for you, but who have a wealth of experience when it comes to independent filmmaking, who can provide or who can impart some of that experience and that knowledge that they've built up over many years onto you. And another one could be a financier. That's another great one. Any contact that you have with a distributor or a sales agent, that's another one. So I'm talking about these relationships that you have in the industry that are based on a service, right? You're going to be working with this person, and there's going to be a monetary transaction somewhere along the way. But what you want to do is really develop those relationships in such a way that they become your allies and they become a resource for you. And I can't stress how important this is and how vital it's been to me being able to not only make films consistently, but actually now start to build a production company and generate an income and generate a living doing that. The two most vital ones here are your lawyer and your accountant. And the reason for that is they just have so much experience in the film industry. They deal with so many producers on a consistent basis. They're seeing all aspects of the industry. So they're seeing the distribution side, they're seeing the production side, they're seeing the development side. They're involved in the production process from the very inception of an idea all the way until the film is released, and even after that. So they really understand the production process. They've got enough battle stories and enough battle scars to know the pitfalls, to know the traps. And so they can be such an important resource. And so if you develop that relationship in a way where it becomes an open relationship, it becomes a relationship where you can pick up the phone and call them to ask what might be a simple question to them, but for you is something that can be really concerning, or it might be stressing you out, or you might just not know the answer and it's extremely important to the project. For them, they might just know it straight away and be able to tell you. And like I said, this is something that's been just really important for me. And so I encourage you, if you're working with those types of people already, to start developing that relationship into something deeper. And if you don't have those relationships yet, those will of course come when you start making films. And so now it's just about being conscious that you do want to develop long-term, relationships with those people so that they can become allies. So another obvious resource is books. And there are a lot of books that have been written on the various aspects of filmmaking. So this can be a really good way to start to develop some knowledge, some skills, or if you've developed some of that knowledge and skills, to actually go back and reread those books and brush up on that knowledge. And so in each kind of part of the production process, whether it's development, financing, producing, marketing, distribution, you want to try and seek out books that can be really useful to you during those stages. In the development phase, the obvious one's a story. I actually love a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing. That's one that I highly recommend to filmmakers that I work with. In the financing stage, I think there's less probably books out there that are really kind of useful. But what I do recommend reading is any biographies of filmmakers. I also recommend reading books like, the obvious one, Rebel Without a Crew, Robert Rodriguez. So while it's not a biography, it's kind of a biography of that film or that period of time. So that's another really good one. Seeking out books by any producers, that's another good one. The reason I mentioned biographies is because you want to get into you want to understand some of the stories behind how films were made and just some of the trials and tribulations that filmmakers had to go through to get their films financed and up. Another good one is Down and Dirty Pictures, or other books by that author, Peter Biskin, I believe his name is. They give you a kind of good snapshot of the film industry at different periods of time. And while they're not specific about film finance, they definitely touch on aspects of film finance, distribution, marketing. So I highly recommend those books. When it comes to marketing, probably the best book that I can recommend is a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday. I think that is an absolute brilliant book, especially when it comes to kind of guerrilla marketing. So that's a book that I would highly recommend. On the production front, I don't think there's as many books out there. Really, the best way to kind of learn production is to do production, right? So if you're not out there making films consistently, you want to start trying to do that. So getting onto even short films or music videos or commercials. So they're just some of the books that I highly recommend in terms of actual filmmaking. And then in terms of just kind of creativity more generally, or even just, development more generally, I think a really great book is Mastery by Robert Greene. So these are books that you often hear me talking about or recommending. There's a book called Daily Routines. That's one that I highly recommend as well, because you get a bit of an insight into the different ways that artists, thinkers, scientists have worked over the years. And you kind of realize, well, there's no one size fits all. There's no best way to do this. The important thing is to develop your own unique routine and then stick to that in a really disciplined way. So those are the books that I recommend, and I think they can be great resources for independent filmmaking. But I'd also love to hear about any books that you would recommend to me or to any other independent filmmakers out there. The last resource that I want to mention is podcasts and interviews. And I think that these are extremely important because they just allow you to understand the different ways that filmmakers have gone through their journey of independent filmmaking. And again, it's similar with books in the sense of, or it's similar to the book that I mentioned about routines, where it's not that there's one size fits all, right? It's not that you're going to listen to an interview and then go out there and just apply what that person did, because that's impossible. There's a great mental model out there that is, the map is not the territory. And that kind of means that even if you have a map, that map doesn't represent what it's actually like when you're out there in the territory. And if you've taken someone else's map and then try to use that as your own map and apply it to the territory, then you're even kind of one further step removed. So it's not that you use these interviews and podcasts to kind of try and find the formula or try and find the one way to do it. There's no one way to do it. You can really go through any process in life in many different ways. And in fact, the best way to do it is through your own unique way. But the reason interviews and podcasts are good is because they do give you different ideas about how things have been done, or they might give you an idea about one specific part of that whole process that you might take away. And you might think, well, that's a really interesting way to do it. Or you might pick up on a reference that filmmaker made in the interview or the podcast. So I think these are a really, useful, readily available and free resource out there that can be extremely useful for you as an independent filmmaker. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you liked the video, hit the like button, leave your comments in the comments section below. I'd love to hear about what other resources you use as an independent filmmaker in any of the categories that I just mentioned. And of course, make sure you subscribe to this channel to get the best filmmaking advice each week. Now, if you're interested in our accelerator program, I encourage you to click the link in the description below. Go and check out our video that takes you through our financing and our producing system. If you like what you see, if it's resonating with you, if you feel like you're at a stage of your filmmaking journey, of your independent filmmaking journey, where you need to skill up on the film financing side, if you're having issues raising finance, if you're not sure how to get through that stage, book a time to speak with me or a member of my team. We'll go through your project in more detail, work out where you're at, where you're trying to get to, if we can help. We'll even put together a strategy with you on that call so that if we work together, you'll understand the way that we'll be working. So if you're interested in the accelerator, I encourage you to click the link in the description and check it out. And don't forget to check out these videos next on how to up your filmmaking game.